I'm Ellen Bintz coming today from Wheaton, Illinois in the USA. Welcome to Impact, a podcast about how we can each bring about real change in the world and getting practical in making that happen. A special welcome if you're listening for the first time, and a big thank you to our new subscribers. Each week, Clive and I look at one aspect of how we can connect our hearts to offer healing for others with our collective intention, prayers, and meditation, and go behind the headlines of a critical happening in our world that needs our attention right now. But in today's episode, I'm talking with a friend of mine, Tammy Minuti, and we are taking a look at the topic of forest bathing to learn a little bit more about something that I bet a lot of us don't know a whole lot about. And as we're recording, it's March 20th, 2025. So I'm so happy to have you here, Tammy, today, and I'm anxious to learn with my listeners more about forest bathing because I have to be honest, I don't know that much about it. I think I know just enough to be dangerous. But before we get into that, I would love for you to just fill our listeners in a little bit about yourself and what you love to do and who you are.
Oh, thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you for talking with me today and happy first day of spring. Like you said, we are here, March 20th, and we got some snow here in the western suburbs of Chicago.
Well, listeners should know that Tammy and I both live in Wheaton, Illinois. So
Yes,
we both got snow, right?
we both got snow.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And yeah, I would love to tell you more about myself and about forest bathing. I think starting with the forest bathing, I think it's easier to start with what it isn't. And that is, a lot of people think that we're going out and we're going to identify plants, we're going to go on a nature hike, we're going to, look at birds and flowers. And that's not what it is. And it's not a hike or exercise. And those are all like really wonderful things to do out in nature. But forest bathing is a very slow meandering through the forest or a park or a nature area, and it's guided by a sequence of invitations. And the guide, I'm a trained guide through the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides. And we purposefully take a very slow approach to bringing people together to meditate and kind of come out of their heads and into their bodies and really awaken their senses. And then we, give out like invitations to go out into nature and spend just quiet time, reconnecting. We're always connected to nature, but we forget or we move too fast through it.
Mhm.
And so this is a very just kind of slow guided time. And we create this liminal space. It's about 2.5 to 3 hours for a full forest bathing walk. And then at the end, we come together and we share tea and a
Oh,
light snack and kind of share our experience. And it's really a beautiful practice.
can you do it by yourself or is it always in a group?
You can absolutely do it by yourself or in a group. And I love to be guided just because, it's really nice to just kind of lose yourself and, have somebody else guiding you through the experience. But I also love to guide because I love to see the reactions people have once they've spent some time and had some aha moments and then shared those.
So by guiding, do you mean you literally guide them in what direction to go and where to go in the forest, or are you giving them prompts? There's things to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Mainly it's giving them prompts and things to think about. And then people wander off for about 20 minutes on their own. And then I'll call them back with a very playful, like owl hoot. And it's fun. You get to kind of connect with that inner child along with connecting with the land and all of the nature beings.
How long have you been doing it?
So I started the program in October of 2023 and then started guiding on my own in January of 2024. So just a little over a year, but I've guided 17 walks in 6 states and 94 people just in that first year. It was just wonderful because I like to guide wherever I'm at and I love to travel. So I've had the opportunity to guide in different states and just had some really unique experiences. I did a wellness weekend up in the UP in Michigan, and the gentleman that owns the
Our listeners are global, so
uh-huh.
they might not know what UP stands for, and that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yes, Calumet, Michigan, to be exact, is where his land is. He has a place there called the Expedition Inn. And he's asked me to come back again this May and do another wellness weekend. But on the first walk, he was like, I'm going to bring my dad, and he's 98. And he's going to come with, his walking sticks, his walking poles. And he did. And I had about 10 participants that first morning, and somebody came out of one of the cabins and they had an 18-month-old. So I had an 18-month-old and a 98-year-old
Oh,
on the same walk. And this practice is really for everyone. It's so adaptable. And we spent about 3 hours in the woods and we all came out. Well, the 18-month-old was sound asleep, by the end. But we all really enjoyed our time, and the forest really does all the work. And that's one of the mottos of ANFT is that the forest is the therapist and the guide just opens the doors.
what other kind of things happen when you walk? I'm fascinated. And do you see a difference in the people from the time you start the walk to when it's over? You see them relax, shoulders come down. I don't know, I'm making things up, but you get the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are drawn to forest bathing when they read about Shinrin Yoku or forest bathing. They read about the science behind all of the physical benefits. Like it lowers your blood pressure, it lowers stress levels, it lowers cortisol, it increases your immune system. There's research going on all over the world, and really Japan and the UK and Australia are kind of leaders in the research, although the United States is doing a lot more research. They found a lot of physical benefits. I'm not a scientist, but the phytoncides that are the essential oils that come off of the trees, that they emit those to ward off disease and bugs in the forest. When we breathe those in as humans, that's part of the physical benefit to us. It's just those natural essential oils.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. And forest bathing's been around for a really long time, hasn't it? Am I wrong? It seems
Yeah.
like it's an ancient practice in Japan or something, or maybe it's not. Tell it where was it begun?
So I think the words forest bathing or Shinrin Yoku were given by the government of Japan in the 80s when they first started to see a lot of autoimmune diseases and cancer in their communities. And so then they started doing this research and they actually create paths in Japan where people go out and they get their vital signs taken, like in the beginning of the trail, and then they walk the trail and then they have them taken again at the end. So that's where kind of the words forest bathing came from. As I've done this practice, though, it's really, it makes sense. We all feel, most people who've spent time in nature know that you feel better, after you've gone out and, been outdoors in nature. And one of the aspects that we learned in the training was to go back and look at the history of the land, give thanks to the native peoples that first took care of the land, find out, what the watershed is. And, you just kind of learn about whatever land that you are guiding on. And so through that, I've met some really wonderful Native American spiritual teachers. And, one of them said, we're all native to somewhere in our ancestry. And we all have kind of that in us, right? Where we're going to feel that connection to the land. And then another one of the teachers that I really admire, and I've really taken this comment to heart, and she said that we're all ancestors in the making. So when I'm out there on the land guiding or even, by myself, there's just a respect for the plants and the animals and the land that you gain after just, kind of looking at it differently and spending more time.
So we've been talking about groundedness because the first quarter of the global healing response is the focus is groundedness this year. It's authenticity. And this quarter, that's why I wanted to have you talk right now, because January, February, and March are groundedness. And I thought it was natural connection that you can't help but be grounded when you finish one of these walks. I mean, it's the literal grounding, right? Because you're connecting to it. But do you feel that 100 times over when you finish? Like, does it help ground you?
Yes. Oh, for sure. And a lot of times people will take off their shoes
Mhm.
or, and of course, not when there's snow on the ground like today. Yeah, there's the physical grounding and in taking off of our shoes and playing, even like if we're by a stream or a river, kind of playing in the water and then, with the trees. One of my favorite invitations is to, sit at the base of a tree and touch that tree, the bark, and imagine its root system and look at the tree all the way up into the sky. And, at different seasons, the tree is just so fascinating and you do connect with it in a way that you really can't put words to it. You try sometimes afterwards when you come back together, and share, but it's always very special.
Sounds wonderful. And we're lucky to have the Morton Arboretum near us that's in Lisle. I think that's Lisle, isn't it? Illinois.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think you've done some walks over there, right?
You know what? I've done a lot of practicing over there.
Uh-huh.
They do offer through their website guided walks with ANFT guides. So
Hmm.
they kind of have their own guides that guide over there.
Where's your favorite place to go forest bathing?
Favorite. I would say right now it would be out at the Healing Gardens in St. Charles.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a private farm where they open it up once a month on a Sunday for the public to come in. And then Deb, who's one of the owners, she also opens it up for centering prayer.
Mm.
And she opens it up for silent Saturdays and a yoga class and yeah, different things. And it's just a little slice of heaven on earth.
Good to know. I'm going to make my way out there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So how long did the certification take for you to complete?
So it was 6 months of meeting every week online.
Oh.
And our teachers were in Boston and Boulder. There's teachers from all over the world. And actually, my cohort, which was the Bobcat cohort, there were people from all over the world in the cohort and very diverse in our ages, in what we do, during the day. And it was so wonderful. I didn't want it to end actually. And so, it was very, very thorough. And then we also had to go through a wilderness first aid training, which I
I didn't
did,
even think about that. Right.
right? Oh, yeah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, right. When they're out there playing in the forest,
Yes.
what can happen?
Yes. And so then I did that through Knowles, through REI, and got to spend the day up or 2 days actually, up at the Chicago Botanical Garden.
Oh,
And that was great training. And then the last part, so I'm certified, but the very, very last part that they want us to do is a 4-day forest immersion. And I'm doing that in April.
where?
Actually, it's here in Illinois. So I they have them all over the world, but my schedule started booking up for, you know, and so I needed to go close to home.
Can't wait to hear about that. And I hope it doesn't snow while you're
No,
out there.
it's, but it's okay if it does, it's a different aspect.
What a good attitude you have. So what drew you to forest bathing in the first place? We haven't even covered that. Like, how
Mm.
did you first hear about it? How did you first think this is what I want to do?
Oh, goodness. I think that my whole life, I just have been drawn to nature. I originally was growing up in a small town on the Mississippi River in the Quad Cities. And then about freshman year of high school, we moved to Colorado. And so then I was right next to the Rocky Mountains, and we were hiking and camping and being in the Rocky Mountains on the weekends. And so I just always had a connection. But after I think COVID, so I started training as a spiritual director when we moved. We raised our kids here in the western suburbs, but then moved to Texas for a while and then moved back in January of 2020. And I was in a program through the Perkins School of Theology at SMU for spiritual direction. And then of course COVID
And
and
SMU is Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas.
yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes. They just go by SMU now.
Mhm.
Yes. And so you know how you start just paying attention more to, what's drawing you. And when you see things kind of over and over again, I'd read some books, I read some articles, I'd made some connections in my own life with my kids as to the healing power of forest bathing. And then it really kind of took a hold of me after I did the program, that the next thing I wanted to do was get certified as a guide for forest bathing so that I could incorporate that with my spiritual direction. So I do a wide variety of guiding, some with my spiritual direction, but a lot more just kind of privately and on the side.
Can see where the two would definitely complement each other. And having done both of them, I'm sure you use them both when you're a guide. I bet you use your spiritual direction, and in your spiritual direction, I bet you suggest going out in the forest sometimes. So I can see how they work together really well. So, what do you love most about forest bathing?
I think that it's kind of like the everyday miracles of it. I will think about, like, Einstein, talks about looking deep into nature and you will understand everything better. It's just kind of a way of being in the world that I love.
Connected.
Connected. Yeah, seeing that connection with everything.
That we're all connected. And it's fascinating what we're finding out about trees. The article I just sent you today from the Heart Math Institute, which, actually will include in the show notes so that our listeners can read it too. And you were telling me about a great book that I want to get that you read,
Oh, yes, The Light Eaters
The Light Eaters.
by
Okay.
I think it's Schollinger.
Tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, I'm not a scientist, but I love to listen to scientific writing. And this is definitely, I definitely listened to this on Audible because it was just a lot easier for me to take in that way. But again, I love how plants, just like the article you're going to post about the trees, they communicate with each other. And it's this silent communication that, you know, we don't hear or see,
Mhm.
but scientists are doing all of these, you know, cutting edge experiments and finding out how adaptable they are and intelligent, which is kind of a buzzword in that book. And it just, it gives me hope.
Yeah.
It gives me hope. There's so much we don't know, and there's just such a beautiful connection between all of nature.
I just read something, and I may not even get this 100% right, so please forgive me, listeners, but I read something that said that the reason that classical music is played for plants sometimes to get them to grow is because they were listening in nature. And in the morning, when the birds start singing, that signals to the plants that they should start releasing a chemical into the air and grow. And so that music of the birds, they compared the notes and, you know, the cadence and everything, and it was the same as classical music. So that's why plants respond to classical music. But I just love understanding why birds sing in the morning, how it helps the rest of nature too. And it confirms, yes, we are all connected. We all have a purpose, right?
Yes.
So I
That
love
is
that stuff.
beautiful. Thank you.
I think that's really interesting. So tell me your favorite story. You talked about nature spirits, and have you been able to see anything or anything fun or anything come
Oh,
up as you've been doing your walks?
for me personally, yes. You know, it's an ongoing adventure. And I always say I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life.
Like your person who walked with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that that is, you know, that is me at 98. He's hopefully going to come again in May at 99, you know. So, you know, I did a solo walk at the Arboretum for about 4 hours, and you know, it was a symphony of bird, you know, just orchestration, you know, in the woods that was so beautiful. And then the light from the sun just really danced across the water on one of the ponds. And I, you know, wrote some poetry and did some grieving. You know, I think we're all, especially, you know, where I'm at in my life, I'm losing a lot of the generation above me. And I think we all have, you know, we're all carrying some grief these
Mhm,
days. And it's really good to just kind of get that out of your body,
mhm.
whether you write about it or sing and dance in the woods about it, you know, or talk to a tree that listens and responds. There's a response there. It's not with words, but there's definitely a heart response there.
I love that. So if somebody's listening and they think, I want to do this, do you recommend a book or anything that they can read to get themselves started?
Yeah, so there's a lot written actually, and there's a lot of really good organizations. I chose to go through the ANFT program, which is there's a guide that Amos Clifford wrote, and then one of the kind of I think, producers of this program is Ben Page, and Ben's book is called Healing Trees, and Amos's book is Forest Bathing. And the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides is the training program, and that's
Okay.
.earth. But there are other ones. There are some really good ones in the UK. It's, I think, the Forest Bathing Institute is in the UK, because I know
Okay.
a lot of listeners all over the world. But yeah, there's a couple.
Okay. We'll put some of them in the show notes, and
Okay.
I know you'll pass them on to me and we'll get them in there. And if somebody wants to become a guide, they would use the same resources.
Yeah,
That's a great place to start.
that's a great place to start. Yeah. And I think it depends on, what your circumstances are. So, one of the wonderful things with ANFT is I could do it online
Mhm.
and then be in person. There may be other programs where you have to go and be in person, more often. I don't know about all the other programs, but this one worked best for me. And I know that they have a lot of different time periods and they're always running new cohorts.
Great. Awesome. We'll put that information in the show notes. Well, thank you so much. You didn't tell us much about yourself, though. So I wonder if you could spend just a minute telling us about your kids and your husband and just a little bit of background so people get to know you.
Okay. Okay. So I've been married. I will be married 39 years in July to my husband, Chris. And we have 3 adult children that are out in the world. Our 2 boys live in Colorado. And our youngest daughter right now is getting her master's in London. And we have a feisty little blue heeler mix puppy dog. Her name's Maisie. And yeah, we love traveling, really love to travel, and really taking the spiritual direction and the forest bathing, you know, along with me is something that I just feel that it's needed right now. Yeah.
Definitely, people need to get grounded and connected back to the earth for sure. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for the work that you do in the
Aw,
world. I know you do a lot, and listeners can't see it, but Tammy always has a smile on her face.
aw, thank you, Ellen.
Always happy and fun to be with. So I've so enjoyed your friendship over the past couple of years, and we'll figure out a time we can get together again.
Yes, thank you so much, Ellen.
So that about wraps it up for this episode. Remember, you can connect with us in the Facebook group and for live intention holding in Clive's daily insight timer offerings, and with me in the Labyrinth Activist Network's Zoom calls. Details of how to hook up with these are in our show notes. Look out too for our next special topic episode, which we'll be releasing in the next few days. Thank you for listening and for sharing with us and holding intentions. We look forward to connecting again next time. In the meantime, as Clive says, thank you, go well, stay safe. And as I say, remember, we're more powerful together.
Impact is presented by Ellen Vince and Clive Johnson and produced by Impact Productions. Our theme music is by Chris Collins and our logo artwork is by Auto Classic. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or your favorite podcast provider. We're a non-commercial podcast dedicated to people of any faith tradition or none who yearn for healing in our troubled world. Please pass on the word so others may join us in making an impact. Thank you for listening.